Welcome back to Helping Families Go Beyond, the podcast by Beyond the Spectrum. I'm your host, Loryn Carpenter, and I am excited to sit down today with our very special guest, Dr. Kerri Duncan, who is a BCBA with nearly 40 years of experience in the field of special education, applied behavioral analysis therapy, and parent advocacy. She's been on an episode prior to this one, and she's just going to be sitting down with us today to talk about obtaining a CDE, which is a Comprehensive Diagnostic Evaluation for families who are wanting to get more services and therapies for their student with autism. So we're excited to have that conversation with her. And before we get into it, I just want to share some quick BTS updates and stuff that we've been up to for the month of October. Last month, we had a really great time representing our school at Manatee County's first ever Adapt and Play Expo in Bradenton. It was a really great event. And our guest, Dr. Kerri Duncan, actually joined us there. And so she was at our booth with us, and it was great just getting to connect with fellow nonprofits and families in our community. It was a really wonderful event put on by the county. So we appreciate that opportunity. And we have our third annual BTS car wash coming up on the 25th of this month. It's going to be at Ace Crowder Brothers in Bradenton off of State Road 64 and Lakewood Ranch Boulevard, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. We are always looking for people to volunteer and to have their cars washed. So it's going to be a great event, raising funds for our programs and just getting to be out in the community. So we're excited, and stay tuned for more information on that. And with that being said, let's get into our conversation with Dr. Kerri. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us again today, Dr. Kerri. We're so excited to have you and your expertise. And so for some of our new listeners that might be joining us for this episode, I'd love to have you start us off by introducing yourself and explaining all the important work you do with Hart for Autism.
Well, thank you for having me again. I'm looking forward to speaking with you. I'm with Hart for Autism, and we provide comprehensive diagnostic evaluation and concierge behavior therapy services for families who have children on the autism spectrum or suspect that they have children on the autism spectrum. My background is 35 plus years, which is revealing my age in the field. And as we spoke before we started this interview, I absolutely love the people that I work with, the individuals on the spectrum. And it's just a joy to be here and a joy to work with this population.
That's wonderful. And we're also excited to welcome you to our board of directors. That's something that we've all been super looking forward to. And we're just really happy to have you guiding our organization and helping us with some of our processes and helping us grow. And so,
Thank you.
Yeah. And so for this episode, we're excited to have you here to explain the CDE process for families and how important it is for them, wanting to obtain more services for their students through achieving that. And so for some of our families who might be new to this whole world of autism, what is a CDE?
Well, it is so important. A CDE stands for Comprehensive Diagnostic Evaluation, and the key word is comprehensive. What parents need to understand is that in order to get an official diagnosis of autism, a CDE must take place. That is the first step to everything. Without that, they won't be able to access therapies. So it's really important that parents understand and get this done as soon as possible, because we all know that early intervention is the best type of intervention. So a CDE is usually conducted by someone who has been trained or certified in giving particular assessments. And the word comprehensive is key because it's not just one test. And I'm getting more and more calls every day where a family said, well, I just paid to have someone give my child the ADOS, the ADOS, which stands for Autism Diagnostic Observation Schedule. That is the most popular assessment that insurance likes to see because it's the gold standard of assessment tools. And so they get the ADOS, They send it into their insurance, and the insurance denies therapy because it's not enough information. And then they have to start all over again. So they call me, and I can't use the assessment that was already done. I have to do my own because it's part of the observation piece. And so we do an ADOS, we do a childhood autism rating scale, we do a developmental history, we do a behavior rating scale, and we do a condensed version of the ADI, the Autism Diagnostic Inventory. That's part of the interview process. So if a child has an IEP from school, an individual education plan, or a behavior plan, we also request that. If they were assessed by early steps, I request that assessment as well. Many times I use pieces of that information in my report if it supports the need or shows a history of autism. Additionally, there are times we use the Vineland, which is an adaptive behavior scale. That assessment isn't used every time like the other ones are, but it is used and available to us if we feel we need additional information.
Okay, so those all sound very thorough. So that's, yeah. And so what would you say is the main difference between a CDE and a medical diagnosis? And what settings can those be used in?
So the CDE is part of a medical diagnosis. So once I do the assessment, I have to have one of 4 types of doctors sign off on my report, and no other kind of doctor will be accepted by the insurance. So the 4 doctors that are accepted are developmental pediatricians. So that's a little bit different. And a lot of people don't know that there are even developmental pediatricians out there. So it's not a general pediatrician. They're developmental. They specialize in early developmental delays in children. It could be autism, it could be something else, but developmental pediatrician, a neurologist, a licensed psychologist, or a psychiatrist. So my report has to be signed by one of those 4 doctors, anybody's report, not just mine, anyone's. And if they're not, insurance will kick it back. So that's another really important piece of a CDE. So generally, a neurologist, developmental pediatrician, or general practitioner will refer a child to me. I do the assessment and I have them sign off. If a pediatrician refers and they're not a developmental pediatrician, I do work with one that will review the information and sign off on the report. So either way, we've got you covered. But those are really important details that sometimes are overlooked, and then it just delays services for the family. So it's really important that parents educate themselves. Once they have or whoever does this CDE signed by the correct doctor, they give that information to the behavior therapist or the speech therapist or the occupational therapist, whomever they're seeking services with. They give them that information. They then contact the insurance and submit the document for pre-authorization to do their own assessment so that then services can be offered.
Okay, wonderful. Wonderful.
It's quite a process.
Yeah,
it
sounds like it. Yeah, it sounds like there's a lot of steps to it, but I know it's probably so worth it in terms of what opens up once they receive that evaluation. And what kinds of therapies open up to families once they take those steps and get that evaluation?
Well, the most common therapy is ABA, or applied behavior analysis, which is the gold standard of the therapies out there for children on the spectrum, because it has scientific data that support the efficacy of that type of therapy. The evaluation can also be used for referral for speech therapy, occupational, or physical therapy. Those are probably the most common therapies that I see. Possibly music or horseback riding therapy could be included. it just basically gives the child that official medical diagnosis. And then their doctor, even their general pediatrician, can then give the family referrals for all the other therapies that may be needed, like feeding therapy, for example. That's another one.
Okay, wonderful. And is this limited by age in any way, or is it mainly for pediatric cases?
We start at age 18 months, and we actually go up through adults. I'm having lots and lots of adults call. They want a diagnosis mainly for peace of mind because they feel they've always felt differently and they didn't know what was going on, and they just want answers. But anyway, all ages, starting at 18 months, that's the youngest we'll do.
That's great. That's great. We actually, that's interesting that you've mentioned that. We had a really great speaker come to our school. It was about a month ago, and she gave a really nice presentation to our staff, Dr. Stacy Greeter.
I know, I work with her.
Yeah. But so she kind of talked about that feeling that some adults have where you're just for that peace of mind where they go in and they're like, let's just see if I have it. And so it is really interesting that something that she mentioned experiencing as she grew up. And then it was funny. Some of the people in the crowd, we were like, well, now that you've mentioned those things, like, maybe I need to go in.
I know. I think that more and more, the older I get, the more I think maybe I'm on the spectrum too. But the bottom line is every person on the planet has characteristics of autism. It's just the degree that differentiates someone with a diagnosis versus someone without. We all need, well, not all of us, but I need planning. I need to know what to expect. I don't like changes in my routines. All of those things, plus many, many other things, are what differentiates someone with a diagnosis. And it's the severity of it. So I don't like change. I might be grumpy for a minute, but I get over it. Someone on the spectrum doesn't like change, and it might take them all day or a week to get over it. And maybe they respond differently by becoming violent, which I don't. So that would be the difference.
Yeah, definitely. I've always said that my brother Scotty just kind of voices what everyone else is thinking, because it's really funny. Like he'll, if we're out in public, if we see somebody at the grocery store, and if we've maybe been standing and talking too long, he just kind of takes their shopping cart and just pushes it. And he's like, okay, go on your way now. But so,
we're all done.
Yeah, but so it's kind of like he's saying what we're all thinking, because we've been standing here 20 minutes and I'm ready to go. And he's like, let's just get this show on the road. So it is interesting just how we all can have those traits of wanting routine. And yeah, I think it's really interesting. But back to the CDEs, how can a CDE guide, not just therapies or any kind of in-school services for families, but is there any way that they can kind of influence the broader supports that a child might need at home or when they're out in the community?
Well, ABA can be done at home or in the community. If a child has severe autism, so there's 3 levels, 1, 2, and 3, with 3 being severe, those individuals will probably require lifelong support. And so this diagnosis could assist with disability income, Social Security, SSI income. It could assist with maybe looking at supported employment or supported living situations. So it's more than just getting therapy. It helps the family maybe get some financial support in various ways, or support through assistance of physical help, respite, those kinds of things.
Yeah, that's so important for so many of our families, the need for respite. But so if a family's looking for an evaluator to get a CDE done, what are some of the key things that they can look out for when they're on that search?
Well, you want someone who understands the process, someone who is completing a comprehensive evaluation, meaning it's more than just one assessment. And you want to look for someone who has experience in autism, who understands autism, a background, and then someone who's had the appropriate training to administer these assessments. So, for example, the Autism Diagnostic Observation Schedule, the ADOS, there's a specific 3-day training that must be attended in order to be able to order the assessment kit as well as administer the assessment. I used to work with Dr. Norman Geller, and I hosted those trainings for him. I'm not able to to give the training because I'm not at that level. You have to be research credentialed, and I'm not. That's a whole long 2-year process. I mean, it's pretty intense, but I've had people say, can I attend that training and then train all my staff underneath me? No. It has to be done by someone who is research credentialed or research certified through the website, the Western Psychological Association, that actually sells those assessment kits. So if it's someone who just, oh yeah, I sat in on somebody else and they showed me how to administer the assessment, no, that is not okay. So those would be good questions to ask. Do they have a certificate of completion by someone who is research-based in order to give that training?
Okay. Yeah, wonderful. And I know I think we've kind of touched on this before in our previous episode that we did together, but I think it's always good for families just to be aware of them anyway. But what would you say are some of these signs that families should look out for if they are suspecting any kind of developmental differences? Are there any symptoms or anything that maybe would check something off in their brain, like, hey, I should get this evaluated, I should pursue this a little bit? And I know that can vary between boys and girls, but is there anything that would maybe prompt a CDE?
Well, depending on the age of the child, but if you're looking at early, 18 months, if a child's not responding to their name by looking, if they're not pointing, meaning joint attention, hey, look at that, I want that, and they're pointing, if they're not doing that, if they're not looking at you when they request something, if they are language delayed, the words just aren't there, and they're not trying to communicate by looking at you and pointing, or so we also look at how do these children relate to people. Do they seek out others to engage with, or do they prefer to be alone in their room doing their own thing? Are they in their own world, or are they in our world? Do they stare off and it's difficult to get them to engage with you as a parent? If they're at a playground, do they seek out children? Do they play with them, or do they play near them? And a lot of families say, oh yeah, my kid plays tag. Well, tag, when someone says that, that's a red flag. Nothing's wrong with tag. But if that's the only game they're playing, that is not okay, because there's no engagement. You're just running around chasing people. That does not count as an engagement type of activity. We also look for sensory differences. Are they picky eaters? Are they rigid in their routines? Do they refuse to eat certain types or certain textures of food? Do they are they hyper focused on things, and everything else around them is completely ignored when they are intensely focused on that one particular thing? Do they have fixations or odd fixations? Like if there's a 3-year-old that knows all the flags in the on the world that represents each country, that's not normal for a 3-year-old. Yeah, that's great information. That child's bright, but that is not a typical thing that a 4-year-old or 3-year-old would be looking at. If they only want to play with action figures and nothing else, and they only talk about action figures, and they only watch movies or videos that involve the superheroes, and they don't want to do anything else, just superheroes, that could be looked at as a fixation. Do they play with the entire toy as it's just designed, or is it just the wheels? Do they just pick up the car by the wheels and spin the car, or spin the wheels? Those are all some red flags that I would look at as possible signs of autism. And a parent can call me. I'm happy to talk them through this and say, yeah, I think it's okay. Or many times I send a family the childhood autism rating scale to complete and send back to me. And then I'll call them back and say, okay, it looks like you're good to go. Or, you might want to consider further evaluation.
Okay. Okay. Wonderful. Yeah. And so over the years, have you seen any changes in how these evaluations are being used to support students with special needs?
Well, they're required now. When I first started in this field in the early 90s, this was unheard of. So CDEs just really came about 6 years ago. And I saw that there was a window of opportunity that needed to be met for these families. And that was, I left the corporate world and I created a company just to do CDEs for families because people didn't know what they were. Insurance they changed the rules, didn't tell anybody until it was too late. And there were gaps in services for these kids because they were waiting to find out what is a CDE and who does it. And now, I have found that insurance does not pay for all people to do CDEs, okay? And for those people that conduct CDEs and accept insurance, you're looking at probably 9 to 18 months of a wait list.
Oh, wow.
If you have a 3-year-old that you know or you suspect strongly is on the spectrum, you do not want to wait 9 to 18 months to get that CDE. You need it done today. I have the luxury of no wait list. I have enough examiners that if a family calls, I can generally get them in within 10 days to 2 weeks. And then our reports are back to the family, signed by the doctor within 3 to 4 business days. Because once they get the CDE, that's the first step to a long process. So they get the CDE, it's signed by the appropriate doctor, then they give it to the ABA provider, which I'll help them find one if they don't know where to go. And that ABA provider then has to submit pre-authorization to the insurance, which could take up to 30 days to get approval to do their assessment. They do their assessment, then they submit a pre-authorization for ongoing services to the insurance. That could take another 30 days. So we're talking a 3 to 4 month time frame if you get everything quickly before you can start services for your child. That's where the concierge services come in. We could help during that 3 to 4 month time by filling in that gap while they get their services. But it's a long process. I help families. I talk them through it many times so that they understand the process. Because if you mess up one part of that, sometimes you got to start all over again. And you don't want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to do that. These kids are precious and they need services immediately. The sooner they get services, the sooner your life is going to change for the better.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And that's just the whole verification process and the paperwork. That's something that we've struggled with even as we've been kind of obtaining our CDC Plus vendorship approvals so that we can fund our Hive program, our adult program. Just the back and forth and the phone calls and the filling out the forms and then no, you missed a spot. No, you're supposed to sign it here. No, you have to add your middle initial. And it's such a dance.
That T wasn't crossed.
Yeah.
I had one ABA company say on the report, everything looks great, but the F84.0, which is the diagnostic code for autism, did not have the 0.0. It'll get kicked back. Okay, so I went in and I changed the F84 to F84.0. Now, that wasn't from the insurance, that was from the ABA provider thinking it could be something that's kicked back because they're always looking for things to kick back. So those little details are extremely important.
Yeah, definitely. And it's good that parents can be aware of that because just of how particular the systems can be. And I know like with insurance verifications and everything, I remember you mentioned something at the Adapt and Play Expo just
Uh-huh.
about some recent Medicaid changes that maybe families
Mm-hmm.
could be aware of. I know you said they
Yeah.
weren't great, but so is there
No.
anything that
So
families might know?
in February, Medicaid uh, changed how they were set up. So it used to be you had Medicaid, and under that umbrella, a family could pick Sunshine Health, CMS Health, Molina. There were like 4 different ones, and they were all pretty comparable. Well, now they have um, sent that out to various insurance companies to kind of oversee the Medicaid. So now you have Medicaid Humana, and all the typical insurance companies that we're familiar with. But with that being said, all of the Medicaid reimbursement rates have been cut by 20%. That's huge. That means families are going to struggle to find providers that accept their insurance. Um, my experience has been back in the 90s and early 2000s, before insurance started paying for behavior services like ABA, parents used their voice and wrote letters and made phone calls and, you know, walked up the steps of the Capitol in each of their cities and fought for Medicaid and insurance to cover ABA services. That same thing is the only thing that is going to change Medicaid and these reduction of reimbursement rates. I already know several companies that are no longer taking particular labels like Sunshine, for example, because the rates were reduced so much, they can't afford to pay people. And insurance is doing this as a way to streamline services and cut back and save money. The problem is the kids and the families are the ones that are going to suffer. And I hate that. I just hate that. And as a professional, I can complain, but it's not going to matter. What's going to matter are the families. They are the ones that have to fight this. That is the only way it's going to change. And I can tell you already, it's exhausting. It's a lot of work, and it's going to take years to change. But it's the only way. It's just really unfortunate that Medicaid has done this.
Yeah, yeah, and and like you mentioned, it's ultimately the families and the children that will feel it the most. They'll feel the impacts of it, and that's just so many of our families already struggle with so many other things, and then when you drop that bomb on them, it's like, what else? I I feel like there's already a lot of barriers kind of put against our families in terms of services and life situations. Um, so just adding that to it, it's just so unfair for them.
It is. It's very unfortunate.
Yeah, but like you mentioned, the advocacy part is so important, and coming together as a community during these times, and I think that's the most important part is just feeling the sense of community and everything through all of it. Yeah, we went to a really interesting workshop, and it was about advocacy for organizations, about going and marching those halls and advocating for the the support and the services that are important to your organization and just the best ways to do that. And it was a really great workshop. But so that's something that we kind of want to work on as an organization too. I think it's just better advocating and just making sure that the best policies are in place for our people and really taking care of our community more. So
Right. That I love that. I think parents need to learn how to advocate. And we don't always know how to do that. I don't know that I would.
Right. Yeah.
So I think it's really great that you're offering that.
Yeah, yeah, that's definitely something we want to work on. But so, yeah, it's, our families mean so much to us, and just making sure that we have the best possible information and opportunities for them. And so that's why we've really enjoyed having you on this episode, is just giving them that information to take the best first steps for getting a diagnosis and making sure that they're making the best possible decisions for care and support. And so we've appreciated your guidance with all of that. And so how can families contact you if they want to learn more about what you do, or if they want to get an assessment done, or if they need any kind of support?
Well, they can look at our website, which is www.hart, the number 4, autism.com. And we have a new phone number that will be answered a lot quicker. The new phone number is 239-512-0077. Or they can email us at info.heartforautism@gmail.com, and someone will get back with them quickly. As I mentioned in the first podcast we did, I've expanded my services by adding additional examiners to include one who is bilingual, so we can help families who speak Spanish. He's successful with families that speak Portuguese as well, even though that's a little bit different than Spanish. There's some similarities that allow us to help those families too. But we do virtual assessments and in person. We offer free screenings. We have one this Saturday. It's already full in the Northport location, but we have 3 more scheduled, 2 in Fort Myers and 1 actually on the other coast. So we service families all over the state of Florida and beyond. We work with a few companies outside of Florida and do assessments for them as well. So we're very experienced and well-versed, and I can proudly say I've never had an assessment refused by an insurance company in over 5 years. I'm on my 6th year, so yeah. So I'm very proud of that. I've figured out the system, I guess, and created a template for my reports that hit all the marks that the insurance is looking for. And if a parent doesn't know, guess what? Contact your insurance. They can give you a list of what assessments are accepted, and just kind of everything I talked about, that they need a vision, hearing, all of those things that are addressed in our reports came from insurance. So unfortunately, it's a game, and you've just got to stay ahead of it and figure it out.
Yep, exactly. You've got to jump through all the hoops.
Yep. And but once you get services, then it'll rock your world, and things will change and get better.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. And I know you mentioned out of state. Is there any, what kinds of stipulations are involved with providing services for out of state? Because you mentioned doing online and virtual and reaching out to beyond Florida. What does that look like? Is there any kind of other requirements, or is it the same as here?
The only additional requirement is I have a psychologist that works with us and that contracts with us, who is what they call it, licensed throughout 44 states. And so the doctor must be licensed in that state, and our psychologist is, with the exception of a few. So really, that's the only difference. It used to be other states would allow their general pediatrician to sign off, but that's changing now. Florida's guidelines probably started first and were very stringent. And I think other states have picked up on that and are now adapting those same guidelines.
Okay. Awesome. I was just curious. That's really interesting. And I know this evaluation process and this information can be overwhelming for some of our parents if they're new to this world and they're new to, we in the front office, we call it like autism bingo, all of the different letters and the different acronyms for everything, the CDE, ABA, and I know that can be overwhelming for families that are just starting out on their journeys. But so what would be some of the best advice that you have for families to feel empowered rather than discouraged during this process?
Talk to other parents. You know, other parents are such great resources because they have learned from their mistakes and can hopefully prevent mistakes and mishaps and delayed time frames for everything by sharing their stories with parents, with new parents. So many times doctors will say, yeah, I think your kid's on the spectrum. Here's a referral for a test. And that's it. And the parent is like, what? And so many times when parents call me, they're new and I just kind of walk them through. So talk to people, educate yourself, read up on it, join like the Facebook parent groups. There's a lot of support on those groups, and I belong to a lot of them. I am not a parent of a child with autism. I am a grandparent of a child with autism. But I have so many extended family members that have autism that I love like I would my own family. I've had them in my home overnight. I've for weeks at a time visiting, and it's not easy. And just finding your circle of support is so important. And I think starting with parents who are on the same page can be the best support you can get.
Yeah, definitely. Having that community. It takes a village. It definitely takes a village. I see that every day here, just the collaboration that happens in classrooms between families and teachers and teaching assistants and therapists. And it is a dance. It's almost like getting an insurance verification. It's just so many things so many things that happen, but it's a really great thing to see. It's really empowering just to see what happens when people come together to make a difference.
Well, and Beyond the Spectrum, I've always loved. So, and I was fortunate and blessed to have the opportunity to sub for Amy when she was on maternity leave. And that was so fun. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. So I really have firsthand knowledge, and it's a great place.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we have a great crew. We've said before that, being the nature of a nonprofit and being at this place, it's like, you're not a jerk if you work here. You're just not a jerk. We said that during a training a couple years ago, and it's just always stuck. Like, you're not a jerk if you work in this environment for this pay. You're not a jerk.
Yeah. Good people.
Yeah. But so we have really appreciated the information that you've shared with us today. And for some of our new listeners that are getting to know you and your organization and your mission, it's been wonderful having your advice and your guidance for families. And I think it'll really help them if they're starting out on this journey, or if they're wanting to learn more on this journey, if they're already on it. I think this is wonderful. So thank you for hopping on and explaining what a CDE is for families and how it can really change their lives and their students' lives. It means a lot to have this information for them, Dr. Kerri.
Well, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure as always.
Thank you.
I'll look forward to seeing you soon because I'm coming up for a visit on the 12th.
That's right. Friday. Yeah.
Yep. So I'll be up on Friday.
Awesome. Well, thank you. We'll be seeing you soon. Thank you so much for joining us here today at Helping Families Go Beyond, the podcast by Beyond the Spectrum. For more resources or information, visit our website at beyondthespectrum.org.